As you know, I'm in Switzerland.
I didn't know that. I thought you were in Canada or something.
No, no, no. I'm in Switzerland. Uh, I spent what was it from about July till October here last year, and then I applied for my Swiss permit, which I got issued to me in January, and then I came back here in February. So I've been here since February. I mean, I've got the TAAL business here, where we set up the office middle of last year. I've got nChain, which I'm involved with here.
Yeah, yeah.
And they set up the office here roughly about the same time. I mean, right now, TAAL has a bigger footprint here than what nChain does. And of course, the Bitcoin Association has its registered association here. So, I sit on the executive board there. So Switzerland is a main area for me. But I've been coming to Zurich for over a decade, and so it's not unfamiliar territory for me. But a lot of my trips from London to Zurich were day trips because it was easy. But now, of course, with what we've got going here, it makes sense for me to spend time, and especially since October last year when I took over the CEO role within TAAL.
Right, and this permit, is that like a visa, or is it are you actually sort of like a Swiss citizen now, or recognised as one?
Well, I have many rights that are very similar to being a Swiss citizen. For example, I have to pay tax here in Switzerland. I'm required to have medical insurance and everything else that Swiss normally do and get. I got vaccinated for COVID here, compliments of the Swiss government and my insurance carrier. So in fact, last Friday I had my second vaccination.
How are you feeling after that? Did everything go all right?
Well, it was kind of interesting. The first one, I didn't know what to expect, and I had it done on a Friday afternoon. By Friday night, around about 7 o'clock, I felt quite unwell, and I thought, "Oh, here we go. I'm getting a fever." I went to bed.
So long as you don't get an ear growing out your back.
I went to bed. And fell asleep straight away and woke up at about 11:30, and I felt perfectly normal. And I thought, oh, that was interesting. And then Saturday morning when I woke up, I felt horrible. And I spent the full Saturday and Sunday, I didn't leave the bedroom. I was just wiped out. I didn't have a fever or anything, but I felt just tired and worn out and no energy at all. And then Monday morning, I woke up and I felt perfect. But my arm was sore.
Sounds like radiation sickness.
This time was a bit different, though. I also had the vaccination on a Friday morning. So it was the morning, not the afternoon. And I felt perfectly normal all the way through until Saturday. Saturday, I was really intensely unwell. And it was much more powerful response than the first time, but it only lasted for about 12 hours and it was gone completely.
Was it a feeling in your head or your stomach or what, or just all over?
Just all over. It was like, when you get the flu.
You do realise you're not selling it to me. I can't wait to have this.
Well, I could sell it to you if you wanted me to.
No, you're right. I'll see what happens to you first.
It was like getting a flu, but without having a fever, if I can put it that way. I did have a bloody sore arm both times, but that only lasted 48 hours. But I woke up on by 10 o'clock Saturday night last weekend. I was quite normal, and I felt perfectly normal on Sunday, and Monday was another day. It was full of work.
Right. What any feeling as to what it might have done to your body? Like grown a few, grown an extra leg or something?
No, not at all. Once it was over, I felt like a perfectly normal person.
Right.
Of course, I don't understand what feeling like a normal person is these days, because you'll notice from the photo that you were using the other day. I've got to get the TAAL guys to change my photo. Actually, I've been working with a couple of doctors and a couple of clinics over the last 2 years on a program designed to slow down or reverse the aging process and longevity and so forth. So,
wow.
It's been a fascinating journey, really. I mean, I take a lot of supplements, and I go to review sessions to change my program 2 or 3 times a year, and I feel totally different through that program, and I actually look different to what I did 2 years ago. Everyone says I've got the same short fuse and intolerance for imbeciles, but physically, I feel a totally different person.
Oh, in a good way.
In a very, very good way.
Oh, and well, let me think. So, I'm always curious about just programs like this, like reversing the aging process, and a lot to do with diet and what's the one, intermittent fasting. So that your body starts to repair the cells rather than regenerate them.
Yep. I mean, I started this journey at a clinic in Dubai just over 2 years ago. There was no mistake why I started on this path. I wasn't feeling well, and I was referred to. I actually went back. I was in London. I just felt lethargic. I didn't feel well. So I went back to the Philippines, and I went through a program there at one of the hospitals where they've got an executive health program, and I spent 5 days going through a number of tests. They didn't come up with anything that was earth-shatteringly wrong. You couldn't point your finger at anything and say that's why you didn't feel well. But a friend of mine referred me to a doctor at a clinic in Dubai. So I took all the test results and I went to Dubai and spent a week there, and we did more tests. And it was from there they said, look, there's a number of reasons why you're not feeling well, and it's a lot of it's related to the aging process, and some of it's related to lifestyle as well.
Right.
So and I said, well, what can we do about making sure that things don't deteriorate? And my doctor said to me, hey, listen, if you want to engage with me on a program and commit to a couple of years, there's nothing that I can see here that we can't completely reverse.
Wow.
And I said, well, let's give it a go. And they said, well, are you committed? And I said, if I say I'm committed, I'm committed, because I'm that sort of personality, right? So we started on the process, and then she referred me to a clinic over here in Europe. That was another part. I mean, a lot of it's related to. Initially, it was related to lifestyle changes, supplements, natural remedies. Then it got into, interestingly, what you said, intermittent fasting. Then the clinic I was working with in Brussels was more focused on age reversal and age management around balancing hormones and so forth. So it's been a fascinating journey. I mean, I do a lot of blood work every 3 or 4 months, and we recalibrate, the mixtures of supplements, vitamins, and everything else that I take. But I do practice intermittent fasting, and that's been that's been a very interesting journey. The clinic in Brussels advocated eating breakfast and lunch, heavy breakfast, light lunch, no dinner.
Yeah.
Which is part of. They didn't call it intermittent fasting, but I got more interested in fasting probably in the last 6 or 9 months. People laugh because last year I went to the Lanzerhof clinic in Germany and starved myself for 5 days. If you'd asked me if I could go 5 days without eating food, I would have said you're off your head. But
did you?
That's
amazing.
Yeah, once you get into it, it becomes, once you get past the first 2 days,
like no food at all. Like, I mean, any sort of vitamins and stuff in the water. Is that it? Just water? Yeah.
Water and a few vitamins and stuff. And I went 5 days. I mean, I was doing yoga and went to the gym and did all that sort of stuff. And they said to me, next time you come back, you should come for a longer period of time. We recommend 9 days. So after CoinGeek, which is here in Zurich in June, I've been enticed back to Lanzerhof to clean myself up before I go back to the Philippines.
Wow. So, I mean, you must have gone through, I mean, when you get hungry, you go through these like emotional phases because your body starts to crave carbohydrate. Like how snacking on biscuits and stuff. I mean, I've been on a diet before, and literally, actually when I was losing weight, I did actually manage to do it in the end, but the third day was horrendous. Like literally, it was almost like everywhere I looked, I saw food or something that was shaped like food.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it, once you break the back of it, because physiologically you do go through a withdrawal process, but once you get through that, it's just psychological. And I've not had I've got a pretty strong mind and always have had. I have always believed that to an extent, the way you think is the way things happen.
They always say you become what you think about.
Yeah, a lot. So, I've experienced all that. I don't recently, and when I say recently, the last couple of months, I've been almost eating exclusively plant protein. It's just another phase I'm going through in the whole trial and error thing.
Oh, have you had a chat with Craig about that?
No. Craig's tried to tell me a couple of times, melatonin. No, Stefan, I'm studying this stuff on one of my courses, and you should be taking melatonin. They go, Craig, I've been taking melatonin for 10 months.
Right. Yeah, he's I can't remember what he said the other day, but he's an avid carnivore because of his condition that he has.
Yeah, meat, and more meat. I mean, the clinic in Brussels advocates eating a lot of protein, animal protein for breakfast, and then salad for lunch and nothing for dinner. My doctorate that I started off with in Dubai was more along the vegetarian path. So I never sort of worked out how those two things came together. But I saw a documentary, or was referred to a documentary a couple of months ago, and I think it's on Netflix, and I think it's called The Game Changer.
Yes, I saw that. I went veggie for a while after that.
Yeah, well, I was fascinated, and I went, "Oh, to hell with it! I'm going to give this a go." And again, it's the first 2 or 3 days your mind starts to play things that you should be eating.
Beef
meat.
burgers.
Yeah, but once you actually develop a pattern, the last 6 weeks I haven't even noticed meat. I must admit I have cheated twice because, with COVID here in Switzerland, you've got to go to restaurants weren't open. So the only restaurants were open were restaurants in hotels. So I tried to get away on weekends, go to hotels, and that way you could actually, get away from home and eat in a restaurant. But, you sit down with a hotel restaurant menu, there's not a hell of a lot of vegetarian options.
Yeah.
And especially if you're there for 3 days,
I actually found there aren't even many healthy options, to be honest with you, even in restaurants. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you sit there and you go, I can't eat any more of that stuff. So, I've eaten some fish out of the lake or some, prawns in pasta or something. But apart from that, and it's only been twice, it's been very easy. Yeah. It's really easy when you're at home.
Do you know what I actually found? What I did find is when I went veggie, probably the third day, I went and played football, and literally my energy levels were literally like through the roof. I didn't think I would be able to play as well as I did or run around as much as I did, and I came to the conclusion that it must have been the animal plasma, or the animal fat in your blood plasma, that prevents the oxygen from getting to the muscles. So after 3 days, when all the animal fat is out of your system, your body can just operate on a much higher sort of performance level. That's one thing I really did notice.
Yeah, I haven't gone out of my way to test it, but I've gone through a period where I've lifted weights rather than doing cardio stuff, and I've got some weights here in the room next door that I had last time I was in, some barbells that I had when I was here last year. And, I had some of them were pretty heavy, and people are going to me, do you really lift those things? And I go, yeah, I do.
All right, nice.
But they were heavy.
Yeah.
I went into that room the other day and I thought, shit, I better move those things. And I picked it up and I moved it and I went, doesn't feel as heavy as it used to be.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's just muscles repairing themselves due to the healthy diet or something.
Well, what I do know is that, tests that I've had on, because I have these ultrasounds, 2 or 3 times a year, on, all the bodily organs, because I firmly believe if you pick up things that are changing soon enough, you can do things about it. And just my blood work as well. Over the last 18 months, all my markers have improved dramatically.
Yeah. I saw you. Yeah. I saw you got married recently. How's your wife? How does she approve of your new regime?
Listen, I swore that I would never get married again.
Well, I don't. Has Calvin ever been married, or has he been single his entire life so far?
No, he's a devout single man. I swore I would never get married again. I've been married too many times in my life. And
what number is this?
Like 3 or 4. I've been in this relationship for 9 or 10 years, and
fair enough. She's worthy of it then.
Yeah, and we got back to we left here. We went back to the Philippines in November, and I had some problems at the border because we weren't married, and even though we've been in a relationship for 9 years, and we have a child, our child is nearly 5 years old, and we're all traveling together, but they were unenthusiastic about letting me in because they were only letting married couples in, where one of the couple was a foreigner. Right. But, having said that, I did get in, and, being the romantic I am, I said to Cherry, why don't we get married?
Well, you old romantic. Oh, look, we need to get in. It's a real hassle, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Let's just get married.
Yeah, because I knew COVID wasn't going to go away, and I do know that I want to get in and out through the border. I mean, I've lived in the Philippines for 11 years, and it's a major part of my life. So
I've had some of the boys actually in BitCoin suggest I go out and visit them in the Philippines because they've moved out there. They live there, and it sounds amazing. I've never been actually. Closest I've been is Thailand.
Yeah, well, the Philippines is a country of enormous extremes. It's got some absolutely magnificent and beautiful places. Obviously, it's got poverty. It's got extreme wealth. It's you have.
They're quite enthusiastic about Bitcoin over there, though, in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Well, they appear to be.
They are, but I wouldn't say that. I think crypto in general, the awareness of crypto in general, and I use the word crypto, which is a label that I actually don't like because I think it's misleading, but still. Most people recognise what you mean when you use that phrase.
Yeah, shitcoins.
Yeah, I think the Philippines awareness is quite high in the cities. I wouldn't say so much in the provinces, but with the number of overseas foreign workers and the amount of international money transfers that go into the Philippines, it surprised me that digital currencies haven't played a more significant role than what they have. Some of that obviously will have to do with government policy and regulation as well, which you've got to be careful of in a place like the Philippines because the government does play a heavy hand at times.
Right. And so going back to the topic of Bitcoin, I mean, one of the reasons I was quite excited about this interview is because when I first got into Bitcoin, obviously, I mean, as I'm sure you know, the rabbit hole is just vast, absolutely massive. But one of the things I researched that was absolutely fascinated me was the Satoshi affaire. And there was this character in there called the mysterious Stefan Matthews. And I was like, who is this guy? Who is this mysterious
you found
Stefan Matthews? Yeah. Well, this. Have you read the Satoshi affair? It's online.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, brilliant story.
I want to talk about that because.
Good, me too.
It was a strange time in late 2015 and through 2016, and some peculiar and puzzling things happened. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on what position you take on this, I was a witness to just about all of it. All of the things that occurred, the meetings that occurred.
Well, you got Craig out of Australia, didn't you, when the ATO were after him? Well,
I don't know whether I actually got Craig out of Australia, but I happened to be in Australia at the time, it wasn't me that actually got him out of Australia. It was more his wife that got him out of Australia. But he and I did rendezvous 2 days later in the Philippines because I was on a flight back to the Philippines, and he flew via a couple of other cities and met me in the Philippines and spent a couple of days with me before he flew on to London, and then met up with his wife in London because she'd flown through to the UK. But that was an interesting time.
Oh, it was sad. The story was incredible. Like, incredible. I mean, did you understand the significance of what you were involved in at the time?
Yeah, I think I did. I mean, Craig and I go back to 2005. So I saw things and had discussions with Craig in 2007, 2008 when Bitcoin was being created. He wanted me to be more interested in the development of the technology than what I was interested in being involved.
How did he first pitch it to you?
Well, I mean,
I've got some magic internet money for you.
No, nothing like that at all.
I was going to say that would have been a terrible pitch.
I was the CIO of a company. The way we met was that Craig was working for a company called BDO, and he was working in their digital forensics audit division in Sydney, and I'd engaged BDO to do an audit of our control systems. We were running the company was Centrebet, and we were running a licensed
gambling operation,
online sports bet, right, in Australia, and we were going through an IPO. So we engaged BDO to do a control system and security audit. And when the partner, who was based in Melbourne, flew up to Sydney to introduce his audit team, I'm sitting in the boardroom, and he had 3 guys with him. One was Craig Stephen Wright. And
what was your first impression?
Well, he was a normal auditor. He was sitting there with a 3-piece suit and tie on, and you know, if it quacks and waddles or whatever, it's probably a duck. And he looked like an auditor to me. So, you know, I got to know him through that process, and because the partner, you know, it's like when you do an audit, there's things that you need to follow up on, and works programs. And Craig was the nominated guy on the BDO side who would was the main liaison point for BDO. So, you know, he was regularly in my office, and then, you know, over time he started talking to me about things and talking to me about ideas and running things, you know, past me. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And I couldn't work out what he was doing, and I wasn't interested. But, you know, with the passage of time, you come to understand what all these, what looked at the time like absolutely unrelated ideas were actually part of a bigger picture that he was.
He must have been in his mid-30s then, was he, about that?
Yeah, probably. He was a good-looking bloke then, good-looking young man. So, you know, and in 2008, you know, he started showing me more detailed stuff, and writings and pieces of what I recall to be versions of the white paper.
Did you take was this interesting, or were you just kind of like amusing him at the time?
I was half interested, but, you know, I had other things on my plate at this stage. You know, we did our IPO in 2006, and we were at the stage in 2008, we were starting to get involved in other projects with other parties, and I had a lot of priorities related to the business. I didn't have time, and 2, you know, well, you've met Craig. You can sit down with Craig and have a conversation, and in half an hour he'll move through 27 topics, and you sit there and you go, what the hell is the connection between he's over here and he's up here and he's down there and he's over there, and it was difficult to piece together. But you know, he spoke to me at the time in January when BitCoin was launched, and, you know, said, you know, my idea has now been launched, and then, you know, he tried to. Is
that what he actually said to you? My idea has been launched. I mean, that's quite quite bold of him, considering how important it was to stay. Like pseudonymous for such a long time. He must have trusted you.
No, he used the BitCoin term to me before it was launched, and after it was launched. And he, in 2009, he wanted me to get actively involved again, and I just said no. In fact, I'll be honest, and I've said this to a number of close friends. You know, I told him in 2008, I don't want to get involved. This idea is not going to amount to anything. And that's what I truly thought at the time. But and time
What did
went
he
by
what did he think it was then when you said it's never going to amount to anything? What was your sort of
I knew what it was. I knew what it was. Digital cash, because he was talking for 12 months. He was talking to me about all different concepts around e-cash, digital cash, et cetera, et cetera. And he thought this was something I should be deeply interested in because I was working in the online gaming sector. But I wasn't at the time, and I remained, unenthusiastic about it. And I left Australia in early 2010. We actually sold the Centrebet business was sold to Sportingbet in the UK. And I left and I moved to London to take up a different position. And Craig and I didn't talk to each other for 2 or 3 years. And it was I was sitting in the Philippines actually because I'd moved from London to the Philippines. I knew he had done work for the company because I had taken a guy with me from Australia into the other business, and he approached me a couple of times and said, "Do you mind if I engage Craig to do some forensic work?" And I said, no, it's fine with me. I'll sign off on that. But I didn't engage with Craig directly.
I've just looked at Bitcoin Pete today. That was the 22nd of May 2010. So that's when Bitcoin sort of first developed a price off of exchanges kind of thing.
Well, at that stage, I would have been in London. So Craig contacted me, I'm going to say late 2014.
Right.
And I was surprised because I asked him how he got my mobile number. And he said, I got it from our mutual friend in the UK. So, long story short, he and I ended up meeting up, and he said to me, I've got a number of personal issues that are brewing here in Australia, and I want some advice. And I would value your opinion. And there's very few people that I would value their opinion, and you're one of them. And when someone says that to you, you can feel the rope tightening, can't you?
Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and I actually had a personal reason for being in Australia a couple of months later. So he and I met. We talked about the whole Bitcoin journey and where it had been and where it was. And I had
was this in 2014? Was it?
It was when we met and had that conversation. It would have been in somewhere in Q1 of 2015.
Oh, so it had an exchange price then.
Oh yeah, and I knew exactly what it was. I'd seen a documentary when I was living in London about Bitcoin. There were a number of people camped out in a forest somewhere with their mobile phones transacting this digital cash, and I just sat there and I looked at it and I went, I can't believe that they're even doing this. Because I remember, I took back to when Craig was trying to get me involved, and I sat there and I still at that stage said, this will never amount to anything. But I did get interested in the blockchain technology. And of course, I wasn't one of those people that would sit there and say that blockchain's great, but Bitcoin's trash, because you can't separate the two.
That's right. Well, if it's any consolation, my mother tried to engage me in conversation once about Bitcoin. She goes, I've just read this thing in the newspaper about this thing called Bitcoin. Everyone's celebrating because it's nearly hit $1. I was like, yeah, and that regrettable moment. You're like,
Yeah. So anyway, I had lunch and I had a dinner with Craig in Sydney, and I listened to his situation, and I asked him a magic question. I said, mate, I can go away and I can come back and give you advice, but it's no good me telling you what I think or what my advice is if it doesn't fit with your personal objectives. So I said the question is, what do you really want to do in life?
Deep and meaningful.
What do you want to do? And he
have you seen the movie Good Will Hunting?
No. Oh yeah, I have, but I don't remember that line if it was in it.
Yeah, Robin Williams says, "What do you want to do?"
Yeah. Well, he said to me without hesitation. He said, "Stefan, I'm no good at running companies. I'm no good at managing people. I'm no good at dealing with banks, accountants, lawyers, HR, administration." He said, "I just want to sit in a room and create things and then hand it all over to other people to do whatever they do with it." And I said, let me ponder that. And of course, what grew out of that was nChain.
Yeah. Chief scientist and all that. He loves it.
Yeah, I said to him, we can sort all the things out in Australia, but this isn't the place to be. We can set up a research operation in the UK. You and the family move to the UK. You can work from home, do what you want to do, go into the office when you need to go into the office for whiteboard sessions with the scientists and the PhDs. And I've never seen Craig happier.
Well, I actually think he's even more happier now than I've ever seen him since I've known him. Like literally, the last interview he did, he was like laughing and joking and smiling. I was just like, wow.
Well, he went through a tough period in 2016-17. Through that period, he was buffeted and attacked from all sides.
Yeah.
I spoke to a guy who interviewed me in Toronto actually a few years ago, and he said, what do I think about Craig's explosiveness and personality and so forth, and I didn't know Craig had Asperger's at that stage. And I said, mate, if I put myself in his shoes, I don't know how I'd handle it. I mean, it's pretty tough being called out by everybody publicly. I don't think I could handle that. And I got to also say that some of the people that have worked with me and Craig, especially at nChain, a couple of people have said to me, "Jesus, Stefan, the man's a genius. What would you give to have his intellect?" And I've said, absolutely bloody nothing, because there's no way that I would have wanted to have had put myself through the traumas that Craig's had to endure over the years.
Yeah. I know that I saw a program once on people that can remember every day of their lives, and they said one of the worst parts is that you can't ever forget the bad stuff.
Yeah,
it's just always there.
Yeah. So let's get back to the Satoshi affair. I had no idea what was going to be written. It wasn't meant to happen the way that it did, but can you tell us your
version of events? I mean, it was. I mean, either way. I mean, it was. Just
if I told you my version of events, we'd be here till Friday. But feel free.
I've got all the time in the world.
But having read it the day that it was released, I put it down at the end of the session, and I went, "It's pretty accurate."
Right. Yeah.
Often these things have got a number of distortions in there that don't accurately reflect the truth or the reality of the situation. But I would say that 85% of it, based on my recollection of events, is pretty accurate. The author can use, as authors do, language to emphasize certain things, like the Men in Black and the ever reliable Stefan and whatever. But
The
you know,
mysterious Stefan.
that's the mysterious stuff. That's how people write. I mean, that's perfectly fine. That doesn't distort or not reflect the truth, or the reality. But I would say 85% of it was pretty damned accurate. There was, you know, I took exception to a couple of points where certain comments were attributed to me personally in one or two meetings, and I, to be honest, I wasn't even at those meetings. I know where I was. I was in another location with somebody else, but I didn't worry about that too much. I mean, occasionally those things slip into the storyline, and that's how it is. But it was pretty accurate.
Did you? There are a few. I mean, one of the reasons I enjoyed reading it so much is because obviously since I've discovered Bitcoin, I've realized that my forte is the fundamental side, because the technicals are just like speed, cost, and scale, and they're effectively sort of infinite because they're constantly being improved, whereas the fundamentals kind of like go down the rabbit hole, and then when you get to the bottom, there's effectively this paradox that you have to understand. But once you've understood it, you can grow from that. And so having understood the paradox about how important it was for him to stay hidden for that 10-year period, because it's the neutral growth of the network without that central point of authority, control, or influence that gives it its fundamental value. When I was reading the Satoshi affair, you know, about the part where he was like hiding in the cupboards on the stairs, you know, of his building, like hiding in the toilet cubicles, you know, when the officers came in, when he was going through the airport, and there was like some, you know, religious chap, like, you know, kicking off about the customs officers wanting to search his wife and stuff like that. I was just like, any one of those moments would have completely undermined the Bitcoin project, like completely, you know. So I was literally reading it with like sweaty palms. I was like, this is great.
Well, you know, I wasn't at the airport, but I was in Sydney, and I did get a phone call to say that actually I was at the airport getting ready to board a flight to leave Australia, and I got a phone call from the office to say, have you seen the Wired and Gizmodo reports? And I went, what are you talking about? And they said, have a look now. So I said, hang on, I'll call you back. I went, oh my God, because the guys from I can't remember which one it was, Wired or Gizmodo, but one of them at least, if not both, was sending emails to Craig for about 3 weeks. Asking
Wired magazine
Craig,
seems to be the most dominant player in the story.
Yeah, and they wanted Craig to interview Craig, to get his version of events as they had been reported to them. And Craig asked me what to do, and I took advice from others, and the consensus was do nothing. And the reason the view was do nothing is because it was considered that on a story of this magnitude, there's no way that they would publish without having corroboration from Craig.
Right.
But of course they did.
Yeah.
And they both published on the same day, almost at the same time, and simultaneously, and I do mean simultaneously in the real meaning of the word, there was a raid that occurred at the office by the Australian Federal Police. So, you know, I left the airport and went back to the office to try to sort out what was going on, and that's when I found out that Craig. I got a call from I can't remember whether it was Craig or Ramona to say that the federal police, because Craig had left his house, and all of the contents at the house had shipped to the UK some weeks before, and they were living in a serviced apartment, and somehow the search warrant or the police also attended the serviced apartment in the city, and of course that's where they got a phone call from the lobby to say the federal police were on their way up. So Craig went and hid, and then of course I spoke to lawyers to find out, what the right thing to do was, and they said, look, Craig was leaving Australia anyway, and there is nothing illegal in him proceeding and doing that. There's it's a search warrant. Just comply with the terms of the warrant and let them have whatever information, documents, whatever they wanted to take from the office, and Craig should just proceed with the plan. So, in very simple terms, that's what occurred. But of course, there was a bit of a frantic period there, and he boarded the flight for New Zealand and then proceeded to go to Hong Kong and Manila to meet up with me so that I could sit down with him and go, what the hell's going on?
Start from the beginning.
And of course, I was worn out. Craig stayed with me, and I've got 2 teenage sons up there at that stage, and he had his laptops with him, and they sat up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with Craig. I went to bed, and they sat up all night with Craig, and he gave them a full history lesson on Bitcoin, the development of the Bitcoin code. And I wake up in the morning and go, "How are you guys?" They said, "Oh, we're going to bed now. And by the way, Dad, he's awesome." I went, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Brilliant. I mean, so did you get to the bottom of, if you just got up, was Craig off the bed as well, or did he continue with his stories telling you what was going on?
He didn't sleep.
Wow.
He didn't sleep. He was, sending emails and doing stuff. He didn't sleep. And I think he slept at my place that night, the second night, and then the next day he boarded the plane to the UK.
So what was going on in your mind at that time? Were you thinking, right, look, I know this guy, he seems legit, never done anything wrong. What on earth is happening? What's he created?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. There's the part as to why there was a search warrant and why the federal police were raiding the office and so on and so forth. And that was primarily to do with the tax office, and my personal view was that their allegations were unfounded, and I spent a lot of time going through the records of things and the audit letters and everything else. In very simple terms, Craig didn't steal any money from anyone, and there was a.
Is that what they were alleging or trying to insinuate?
Well, you see, the problem was this. Craig had set up 16 companies or thereabouts in a group to do research, and I never fully understood why he had to have 16 companies, but his idea was, well, every idea needed a company.
Right, okay.
And then he applied. The Australian government had then announced that they were increasing the R&D investment grant rebate scheme, and to be able to get to be able to register for that, you needed to go through a process of putting your research ideas to Oz Industry and getting it approved. And then if you had an approved idea, you could make investment for research. And then at the end of the year, what you spent on that research, you could claim back through it was a tax office that was appointed to actually make the payments. So if you spent $1 on research, you got roughly 50 cents in the dollar back. Mm-hmm. And the first year that he put in his claim, it wasn't such a large amount, and the payment was made. Mm. The second year that he put in his claim, there was a significantly higher amount, and they went, hang on, who is this bloke? So then they started wanting to know what these projects were. And when the tax office comes to audit, they send auditors, and you've got to sit down with the auditors and you've got to answer questions. Well, of course, Craig doesn't suffer fools, does he? So he created enemies at a personal level that he didn't need to.
Right.
And he should have known better than to behave like that, because he was an auditor himself.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Right, but nonetheless, he basically told them they were fucking morons and didn't understand what they were looking at.
Well, it's probably true.
It was probably true, but you don't have to tell them. So,
and that's the Asperger's coming out.
Yeah. So then, of course, they go, well, we're not going. Where are your bank statements? Well, some of these payments were made with Bitcoin. Yeah, but we want a bank statement and we want a check button. Well, this is Bitcoin. I can give you the payment addresses and you can check it.
Yeah.
And of course, the arguments blew up from there, and it got out of control. So, what do? They say, okay, well, we're not going to approve these transactions as a deductible, and therefore we're not going to pay your claim. But on top of that, because you've been such a nice guy to deal with, we're going to give you a 200% penalty notice. And of course, that's where it all comes from. So,
right, got you.
That's in very simple terms. So that's one side of it. The other side of it was what Wright and Gizmodo did, and that didn't worry me so much because Craig is Craig, and Craig was Satoshi, and Craig invented this technology, and I knew that. So I knew that at some point we had to deal with that, but Craig wasn't ready to deal with it. And it was, when you're not ready to deal with something and a third party forces you, and especially if you're, the type of personality that Craig is, that didn't sit well either. So I had both those things to deal with. The tax office thing was much easier to deal with, and the obligations of the Australian companies were much easier for me to sort out. I mean,
Sounds like you're playing the role of a PR agent.
No, much more than that. I mean, in putting nChain together, I spent 9 months, actually probably closer to 12 months, working directly with a team of about 8 lawyers from Baker and McKenzie in Australia. And we combed through all the research and assets of the Australian companies that were acquired. That was the foundation pieces of nChain, and structured the nChain. I worked with bakers in Australia and bakers in London. Took advice from them as to how to move, how to acquire intellectual property at arm's length. I didn't want to short circuit anything. I wanted everything to be done properly. So it was a long, expensive process, but a lot of good came out of it. I then spent time in the infancy of nChain in London as the CEO of that group for a couple of years.
What year did that start? Was that 2017, 2016?
Really, June 2015. I think it was the 29th of June 2015. We entered into a term sheet on the deal, and shook hands and signed some papers, and then I spent the rest of the year working with bakers to make it happen. But in the meantime, Craig and Ramona had gone to London and looked at potential properties, and we'd worked out how to apply for visas and permits and all those types of things. And so it was probably around about October that they moved out of their house or thereabouts. But it wasn't until mid-December that Wright and Gizmodo and the raids occurred. And of course, in the media, it was painted that Craig was on the run from the federal authorities and had fled Australia, which was so far from the truth. It was just ridiculous.
And had you Had you read the white paper by then?
I read the white paper in 2008 before it was published.
Ah, okay. Well, I mean, most, well, some of the guys, obviously I suppose techie guys, when they read it, you know, they seem to have read the white paper and grasped the concept immediately and just gone, wow, Byzantine generals problem solved, the double spend solved. Well, I mean, obviously, paradox of centralized starting point, but kind of like the issue of privacy and anonymity solved. Did the kind of like the gravity of what the technology that you were looking at not sort of like register at the time, or were you just kind of like still in two minds as to whether or not it was the entire concept was viable?
I wasn't in two minds.
Yeah.
I understood what I was reading, because it wasn't as if I was reading something I'd never heard about before. I was reading something that was a culmination of, 20 or 30 discussions that I'd had with Craig over quite, almost a year. So, what hit me more than anything was that I now understood what all the component pieces were designed to do. It didn't strike me at all that there was anything earth-shattering in the design or the solution. I just felt that it was an interesting innovation that didn't have legs.
Did you view it as just kind of, did you just think it was like digital money?
Yes.
So was the
yeah.
I mean, I guess
let's be honest. Even if then in 2008 I had gone, okay, now I understand the whole blockchain concept, and this is quite revolutionary. I would have. I mean, my head was, what's the application of this? And to me, there was no immediate application of what he had invented.
Yeah, I mean, you can be forgiven for that. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Well, the entire concept of data sovereignty.
But you think about it, it wasn't for years that really became apparent, because the world changes, and he was solving. He provided a solution to issues that weren't issues yet.
Yeah, no wonder he had trouble explaining it. It's like, all right, so there's going to be a problem that I fixed, but that problem hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah,
it's not an issue just yet.
One of the things that is actually true that was in the Satoshi affair. I was in the meeting where he made the statement. I think I might have even been the person that asked the question, and his response was, I set out, I designed a car, but I've only delivered the wheel. Something along those lines.
Right.
And it probably, even then in 2016, early 2016, when he made that statement, I kind of went, yeah, I know what you mean. But in all honesty, I didn't really know what he meant, but I do now. But I do now.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So was your journey down the rabbit hole gradual? I mean, do you remember? Was there an aha moment for you?
Yeah, there was. It was when I met him in Sydney in 2015, early 2015, and I spent half a day with him talking about things, because the world at that stage was a slightly different place, and my head was in a slightly different position in terms of thinking, and I really, at that stage, felt that I understood the implications of this technology. And that was my aha moment.
Was it something Craig said while you were sort of in conversation with him?
No, it wasn't. It was more the maturity around my thinking than anything else. I mean,
did you understand the sort of concept of data sovereignty that he created?
Yeah, yes, but it was at that point I admitted to myself that I had not fully, or to any meaningful extent, appreciated what I was looking at back in 2008. And people say to me, well, don't you wish that you did? And my answer to that is no, not at all. I had an error in judgment. I misjudged things. I'm one of these people that, I'm more than happy to admit that I made a mistake in judgment. And I did. But if I hadn't, what I have and what I'm doing today wouldn't exist.
Right, yeah, got you.
Because there's another story that I don't want to get into, but it is a fascinating story, and my closest personal friends know. He offered me a very significant number of coins at a very, very low price of 1 penny each.
Wow.
In 2000, very early 2009, and I told him I was happy to provide him a loan if he wanted some funding to pursue his dream, but I wasn't interested in playing in the project.
Right.
So there's a whole lot of possibilities that could have come out of that, but none of them would end up where we are today. And I'm very happy where we are today. I'm doing what I love. I'm doing what I enjoy. I am privileged in the fact that, I've been through, I was working and able to learn so much about what happened with the internet industry.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that the internet, as we use it today, was secured by one private key.
Yeah, well, if you look at the evolution of the industry that we call the internet, or the sector that we call the internet, and you run a parallel ruler over this industry that we call the crypto sector, there are a lot of parallels. And I certainly believe that, the same changes, consolidations, mistakes, adjustments that we saw through the whole internet bubble and everything else will occur in similar ways, not identically, but similar ways in this industry.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So, it's been an interesting road. And 2016, I was sitting in rooms and I saw all the stuff that was reported and misreported in the media. I had to sit there and counsel Craig about how to deal with some of the shit that was being thrown at him day after day after day on social media.
Wow.
The sessions that involved Gavin and John, I was one of three people, depending on which session, in the room when those proof sessions occurred.
Wow.
Have I seen proof? Yes. How many times have I seen proof? At least 6 times. And it's just not those 2 names. There are other people that I could name, but I won't, because I won't breach their privacy.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I mean, I wonder if one of Craig's statements when asked about Bitcoin was he mentioned the central banking BS. That to me has been a real light bulb moment. I mean, I've sort of had my own epiphany about Bitcoin and gone down the rabbit hole myself, and literally the things that I have discovered have blown me away, like literally blown me away. And I wonder if Craig already knew about all of these things previously, because when you have sort of like a photographic memory like he's got, you just remember everything. My memory's shot to pieces, and yet I was still able to piece together eventually, after revisiting things, what was going on in the world sort of like in the background. Whereas I wonder if Craig knew that, from the beginning, and then was dealing with the, well, I suppose you want to call it the political, don't want to get conspiratorial, but the dark forces coming out, desperate to maintain control of, the world's reserve currency and all that, really.
I don't know, but what I do know is that Craig is an incredibly deep thinker, and he sees things years in advance of other people. So, go back to that statement he made, I designed a car. Now, what he means is up here, he designed a car, but what he delivered was a wheel. The rest is yet to come.
And when did you sort of like start to realize his level of genius and intellect, when you sort of had a grasp of just how vast it was? There must have been like a change in the time from him kind of like just annoying you in your office, going, "Oh, what do you think of this? What do you think of that?" to then suddenly just like, wow,
I think I started to appreciate the enormity of what he had created when I spent that 6 or 9 months in Australia doing due diligence on his companies. And because he and I spent almost every day together, and I was looking at the research files, the research papers, the filings with OS Industry, etc., etc. And I started to realize that there was a shitload more going on than the blockchain and Bitcoin. And where I really started to become, I guess it's almost in awe of the intellect of what I was dealing with, was in 2016, when, even though we were going through horrific daily upheavals,
was that from social media, or just like political, legal?
It was legal. It was social media. It was internal. We had very difficult situations in nChain that, throughout the course of 2016, I was able to fortunately resolve, which enabled Craig to be what he is today. It was during that period I just realized that we'd just barely scratched the very, very tip of the inventive iceberg.
Amazing. I mean, did you get goosebumps when you sort of start to realize that? I know I did.
I've had a couple of goosebump moments.
I mean, I remember like talking about Bitcoin when I was kind of just discovering it, and literally I was like kind of like getting these like pins and needles sensations, like literally just I mean, I don't know what the chemical was that was going on in my body, but just like literally I couldn't believe what I was discovering. And for me personally, because I'm not really all that technical, I had to sort of pull on all my experiences from my life, and one of them is dealing with people with Asperger's. So when I found out that he had Asperger's, I then realised that nothing he does is ever left to chance, and it's planned meticulously. So whenever like he was giving a vague answer about something, I was just like, "There's more to that," and then I would dig in. and then I would find out why he'd done it. So, for example, I found out why he'd chosen October the 31st to release the white paper. Why he started the network on the 3rd of January. Why there was that 10-year period. Why he started the Tulip Trust. I was just like, this is just absolutely sensational.
Well, I've sat in meetings, particularly with lawyers, and they ask Craig a question, and he'll answer the question. And I sit there and I go, I think I know what you want to know, but you're asking the wrong question. And they go, what do you mean? And I said, just a minute. So I walk over and I go, is this what you want to find out? And they go, yeah. I went, okay, Craig, what they want to know is this. And then he'll answer that. And I said, so now that begs the next question, the next question, the next question. You've got to go through 6 questions.
Yeah.
And then he gives them the answer that they wanted.
Yeah.
Because you can't ask Craig an open question. You've got to ask him a series of closed questions, and you'll get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
It's just the way. And I learnt that back at Centrebet because, my guys in my network operations area used to have problems, and he would not answer the question. And I sat him down one day and I said, for Christ's sake, Craig, why don't you just tell them what they want to know? And he said, because if I do that, they won't learn anything. I said, go figure. And he goes, look, it's this way. If I lead them through a series of situations and they eventually get to what they want to know, they will have learnt something along the journey. I said, we don't have fucking time for this, mate. we just give him the answer. But no, he wouldn't budge from that.
Right. I guess that's his way of maybe if he's Asperger's, that's his way of measuring people.
Maybe. And another thing, when I was in Sydney in 2015, and I was doing this due diligence and working with bakers, at the same time, Craig was running online classes for, I think it was Charles Sturt University, as the lecturer, and he had like 250 people in his class. And I had to sit there and read reports in the media and social media saying that this was all bullshit. Craig wasn't even associated with the university. But I sat opposite him in his desk one day, watching him as the lecturer give the online class. And as strange as it may be, the student who came out of that class with the number 1 highest grade, he said to me, Stefan, we should hire this guy. So I hunted. The guy was living in Queensland, and we got his contact details and called him, and I said, listen, you're a very impressive man. I'd like to, what are your plans? And he said, look, I can't take a job. He said, I'm moving to the UK to do some extra extended studies in the UK. And I went, really? We're opening an office in the UK at the end of the year. How would you like to work part-time for us in the UK? And he did. And he's still associated with nChain today.
Wow. That's a stroke of luck.
Yep. So, there's a lot of rubbish that's been written. People love to discredit Craig and say, he's a liar and a fraud and all these things. He's not.
Yeah.
He might say some strange things and be appear misleading at times, but that's his personality. It's not. It's not the man he is. He's probably one of the most honest men I've ever come across.
Oh yeah. Well, did you understand the significance of him not revealing himself until the 1st of January 2020? Because he when the keys to the Tulip Trust were returned to him, because he had decided. Well, this is what I can see. The phases that Bitcoin go through was first the release of the white paper to give the starting point credibility, so that anyone and everyone had the opportunity to start it. So it's not like he sent the email to his local supermarket. He sent it to published it on a cryptographic mailing list. Waited, well, obviously 2 months, because that's what's considered a reasonable amount of time in law. And then after that, it was the 10 years of the growth of the network without that central point of authority, control, and most importantly influence that gives Bitcoin its fundamental value. So I was just like, well, yeah, but when is that growth period come to an end? And because obviously there has to be a point where he's probably going to come out and guide the project in the way that it has to go. Particularly because if Bitcoin is centrally controlled, it cannot have any value because it can't be a commodity. So therefore, he knew that it was going to. Well, he knew that there was a very high probability it was going to be tampered with by people who realized they could take control of the network. And so the Tulip Trust was Bitcoin's insurance policy. Yeah, he was literally going to tank the market with the Tulip Trust. But I realized it was kind of like it was up until the 1st of January that prior to that time, that's why all of his answers were wishy-washy.
I had multiple conversations with Craig, obviously in late 2015 when he was being contacted by Wyatt and Gizmodo. And, it was at that time I said to him, well, what's the problem with, coming clean? And he said then, and he said it multiple times since at various stages, I will not be forced to do something. I will do what I do on my own terms when I'm ready. And, one thing people close to Craig all realize, if you try to force the man down a particular path, that will end in destruction.
Yeah.
He will become resistant to the extreme.
Yeah.
So, I know him well enough that type of tactic will never ever be successful in Craig's life.
But did you realise that when he says I won't be pushed to do anything until I'm ready, that he had already planned at that time when he would be ready, which would be when the keys to the Tulip Trust were returned.
He didn't have a preconceived date in his calendar or his mind, but he did come to me and say, I'm ready to go and talk publicly, and I want to do that at Arnhem.
Right, yeah, fantastic speech.
Right, and I said, are you sure? And he said, yes, I'm sure. And of course, you will remember that it was John Matonis that stood up on stage and introduced Craig and gave Craig his speaking slot.
Yeah, Mr. Aussie Bitcoin Dundee, wasn't it? He introduced him as.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
But there was also Craig also said, I can neither confirm nor deny that I am Satoshi Nakamoto.
Yeah, but he was ready to start doing things publicly, and over time, he just got to a position where it was, to hell with it. The various projects, BTC was in, it was taken down a path that took it so far away from the original design. BCH was meant to remedy that, and personalities got involved again, as you know, and it didn't, and there were further conflicts. But he's very comfortable now that BSV is the original implementation of the design, and we can sit there now and say, well, everything Craig said over the years is correct. BSV has, I'm going to use the word enormous, but, it has unlimited scaling capability. And, the transaction prices are big, through 100th of a cent, they get lower and lower with scale. And of course, from what I can remember forever, that's what he told me. So, everyone said it was wrong, that it wasn't the case. Everyone said that Bitcoin didn't have the capability of delivering smart contracts. It did, but no one knew it. Vitalik went off from the BTC project and created Ethereum because he believed that Bitcoin couldn't do what he designed Ethereum to do to solve that problem, but it could.
I thought it was because he approached Blockstream and said, "Look, can I build Ethereum on top of Bitcoin?" And they said no.
Well, that was probably his original solution to delivering smart contracts and tokenization, because that's probably how he thought that it needed to be done. Otherwise, smart contracts and tokenization couldn't exist in the Bitcoin world, but they can, and they do, and they live in the BSV world. So BSV's got everything. Craig always said it had everything. The number of times he sat there, he even sat there in Sydney in 2015 and said, "They're destroying my project."
Yeah. I wonder if he expected that, though, because he set the Tulip Trust up as like Bitcoin's insurance policy back in 2011.
I saw the man frantic, pacing around a boardroom, pacing around the table with his hands on his head and his hand, saying, "My project is being destroyed. I can't sit by and watch it be destroyed." This is back in 2015. He takes his creation incredibly personally.
Oh yeah. But what I'm saying is, I think he still knew that something like that was very likely to happen. Because with Bitcoin, because it's accountability that keeps it neutral. So with it being accountable, it's not controlled. So then you just simply tamper with the signatures, which is what makes everybody accountable, to control the system. So I have a feeling that I think he anticipated something like that happening, but obviously couldn't foresee how it was going to play out exactly. But when it did start happening, it was just like, right, how are we gonna deal with this? But I think he knew something like that was gonna take place. He just didn't know exactly how it was going to go down.
Well, he certainly saw it happening before his eyes. Whether he was able to foresee and how much he foresaw, I'm not sure. But I know he was incredibly animated around some of the individuals and personalities and what they were thinking and what they were capable of doing, and I must admit, back in mid 2015, I had hair then. I used to scratch my head and go, this sounds a bit far fetched, but it wasn't.
Well, what in what respect?
Oh, just the way he saw things unfolding, and he had a much deeper insight than I did.
Did he ever explain that to you, like what he suspected was going on?
Not in any logical form. It was more in rants and raves.
Yeah. See, I mean, one of the things. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I actually had lunch with Craig in London, and one of the reasons I was kind of wanted to meet him and have lunch with him is to just kind of like get an idea of his character, because obviously I'd seen him on stage and I'd seen him on YouTube and kind of like blowing his lid and you've
seen nothing, my friend. You've seen nothing. I've seen him in absolutely full flight.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. But when I wasn't really too sure, what to make of him, but I was kind of like thinking, like, how can I trust that you're not gonna fly off the handle? And when I had lunch with him, I thought, you know what, I'll just kind of like test his metal a little bit and like press a few buttons. And I said, oh, what's it like? Being answerable to these people at nChain, even though he'd sort of like you and him had set the company up and all that. And I remember specifically, like, he sat back in his chair and there was this grin that came on his face, literally like a Cheshire cat. And I knew that all this stuff that you see on it was all bravado. He was like having a whale of a time. He's like, he knew exactly what was going on. And that's when I thought, you know what? Like, that's kind of like what made me trust him. I was like, you know what? This is genuine, because I didn't have the technical abilities to assess it. I had the sort of like at the time it was a relatively sort of shallow fundamental understanding. I had the basics, but I was kind of like putting the pieces of the jigsaw together. And for me, at the time, he was a big piece, and that particular moment kind of like fitted the bill perfectly.
You got to remember, nChain delivered the solution to his answer to my question. What do you want to do in life, Craig?
Yeah.
I
think he wants to go down. I think what he wants to do is go and sort out all the bad guys. I think that's what he's doing. A superhero, a blockchain superhero.
I don't know.
Satoshi Nakamoto could be a superhero.
It could be. Sometimes I sit there and I live in a world where I spoke to Craig a couple of hours ago. I have a weekly catch up with him, and one of the topics for this week that I wanted to catch up on was all the court cases and litigation and where all that was. And there have been times over the years where I wish that these things didn't exist, but I do understand why they need to exist and why they need to take place. And I've never been anything other than supportive to Craig. I know, I've lived through those years, those tough years with him. I've been through some horrible situations and discussions that we've had to have around some of these things, particularly the events of 2016. And I fully appreciate where he is.
Yeah, it's been great. I've just seen. I know we had an hour booked. It's actually been an hour and a half. So I don't wanna.
Tina's been staring at me through the wrist.
I thought that might be happening.
And I take that as a significant warning signal. So.
Well, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you on the show. Honestly, I've absolutely loved it. Hopefully we can maybe do like a part 2, or something like this later on. Certainly, I'm sure we'll catch up sometime after the CoinGeek conference and stuff like that.
Are you going to? Obviously, you're probably not. Are you going to be across here in Zurich for the conference?
I would love to, but I haven't planned it just because of COVID. It's still kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
And
there's significant processes you got to go through to get permits and so forth. It's not easy, but hopefully COVID. It's not going to disappear, but hopefully things get a lot easier over the next 6 months, and we can have some opportunities to catch up face to face.
Did you weren't at London, were you? The last CoinGeek in London.
I was.
Oh, were you? Were you there? Right. I didn't see you. I absolutely loved it.
You got to remember, I sneak around the place and hide in shadows.
Right. Well, see, that's what I spend my time doing at these conferences, like, searching out all these people hiding in the shadows. I'm like, I know you and I know you. Like, this is who I am. Yeah, it's great fun. Yeah, so it's been an absolute pleasure, Stefan. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been absolutely great. So yeah, I wish you all the best with your diet and health journeys and stuff like that. And
Thank you.
We'll catch up sometime soon, hopefully.
We will indeed. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. See you later.
Cheers.
Bye. Wow, what an amazing chat that was. That was absolutely sensational. I don't even think I'm going to have to edit any of that out. But tell you what I will do now is I will just play the conclusion that I do to all my shows. So hope everybody enjoyed that chat as much as I did. And see everybody soon. Catch you later. Get paid for posting your pics on Relica. Download the app now at www.getrelica.com. Get your tweet etched on Twitch, forever on the Bitcoin blockchain. Do it today at www.jointwitch.com. BuyBSV.live, the best place to buy Bitcoin SV online. Support independent content creators on micropayment platforms such as Streamanity, Twitch and Relica. We should profit from our data, not the large corporations who track, monitor and sell it. If you enjoy the Bitcoin content that I produce, please support me by heading over to www.sirtoshi.tv, where you can keep up to date with all the latest news, gossip and content as it's created. Thanks very much. To get started in Bitcoin, go to freebsv.com, where you can claim your free Bitcoin. Then head over to Twitter and follow @IamSatoshi, where you can take part in his very generous and world famous free giveaways. The future of advertising meets the power of Bitcoin at TonicPow. Get paid for posting advertising campaigns to your social media profiles. Go to www.tonicpowads.com.